Hey, welcome to Today Matters. My name is Scotty James, and I'm one of the pastors here at Skyline Church. Today's devotional has us in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 10. And before we do that, I'll give you some quick context. So we have a woman named Hannah here, and Hannah is unable to have children. In fact, in verse 5, the Bible says that the Lord had closed her womb. And so to be able to not be able to have children as a woman during this time was very shameful, very discouraging. And so Hannah is going to go to the temple and she's going to cry out to the Lord for the son. And that's where we'll pick up. It says, in her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow saying, Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. So Hannah says, God, I'm in so much pain, so much anguish. I so desperately want a son. And here's the deal. I make a vow. If you give me this son, I will give him back to you all the days of his life. And this is the question that I want to encourage you to ask yourself in your prayer life. If God gives you the answer to your prayer, are you willing to give it back to him? Again, if God gives you the answer to your prayer, are you willing to give it back to him? I believe we should ask ourselves this question because it reveals the heart behind our prayer. We see in James chapter 4, verses 2-3, that we have not sometimes because we ask not, and we don't receive because we ask with the wrong motives. And so God is, even more than the answer to the prayer, God is looking at our heart. And our heart oftentimes determines or influences how God will respond to our prayer. When our heart is for him and for his kingdom, those are prayers that God delights to answer in. But when our heart is simply to serve our own selfish pleasures, God is less likely to respond to those prayers in favor. So I've been talking to my children about this a lot lately and encouraging them to ask themselves, if God gives you this blessing, how are you going to bless someone else with it? Or how are you going to bless him with it? And so we've been talking through this, and they've been praying for a TV. And they say, well, Daddy, if God gives me this TV, I will invite friends over and encourage them to watch VeggieTales with it. Or if God gives me this new toy, I'll invite friends over and play with them with this toy. And the point that I'm trying to make is that I'm trying to train my children to not just pray for things, selfish things for themselves, but to also say, okay, God, if you give this to me, how can I give it back to you? Or how can I bless someone else with it? So I want to encourage you as you evaluate your prayer life and you evaluate the things that you are asking God for, ask yourself, God, or how will I give this back to God if he gives this to me? And rest assured, when you start praying like that, and you start praying in alignment with God's will, you start praying for God's glory through these prayer requests, God delights to answer those prayers, and he will be faithful to answer them according to his will.